Aloha, hockey fan! This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the BlueNote Fan Report. And this is the only show out there that's by a fan, for a fan, and you got to know about you, the fans. That's right. Okay, so this is the middle of November, and we should be playing hockey, but we're not. This is the new COVID era, and everybody is dying for some type of hockey. Well, I reached out to two of my friends, Mr. Jim Thomas and Mr. Tom Timmermenn, the Blues beat writers for the Post-Dispatch, and they both agreed to come on the show and talk some hockey with me. And I got to tell you, I got to thank Mr. Timmermenn. He came on during his vacation. Thank you, Tom. And Jim Thomas is always going to be a good friend of the show. He's the one that opened up the show to the interviews that you've been seeing and enjoying, and I got to thank him. So in today's show, we're going to talk about the jersey. That's right. We're going to talk about the reverse retro jerseys, and I thought I would show something that I have to all you jersey fanatics out there. I have two original starter jerseys. This is the original clown jersey, as we like to call it. These were my daughters. I bought these for my daughters when they were very young, and they were very well worn and well loved. And you know, for me, this jersey's got a little bit of meaning to it. And I will do a jersey show. I had been working on one, and I screwed some things up, but I'll get a jersey show out in the next week or so because I really want to get into it the right way. And I really want to look at all the jerseys because I am in the minority when it comes to this jersey, as you'll find out. We're going to talk about the Blues and free agency. We'll talk about Tarasenko and Steen. They have some good enlightenment on that. And we'll talk about what's going on with Armstrong, what Armstrong's thinking right now, the things that he said out in the press, in public, and maybe some things that he said in private. This is the very good interview. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm not going to edit it like I normally do. I'm just going to show you the raw footage from the Zoom meeting, and we'll go from there. So it might look a little different, but I think you guys will enjoy what they both had to say. So without further ado, let's give Jim Thomas and Tom Timmermann a very big...
Let's go, Blues! Let's go, Blues! Let's go, Blues!
and a BlueNote Fan Report welcome. Here we go. Well, everyone, please give a great, big, warm welcome to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch beat writers, Jim Thomas and Tom Timmermann. Jim and Tom, welcome back to the BlueNote Fan Report. It's great to have you guys with me.
Great,
Thanks for
great
the
to be here.
Oh, no, this is great. And actually, I mean, it's weird that I'm talking to you in November, because normally in November you'd been telling me, hey, I'm too busy, leave me alone. We don't have any hockey, man.
We just wouldn't be answering your emails, but yeah. No, yeah, it's normally a really busy time of year. We're only about, what, 2 days, I guess, something like that, from the second anniversary of Craig Berube becoming head coach. So, yeah, we'd be right in the thick of it about this time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And by the way, you ignore my emails anyways, Jim.
I don't.
No.
I answer more than 50% of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Rounding up, you're good.
Yeah. So the big thing on everybody's mind that we need to talk about, it came out on Monday. The NHL and Adidas released these reverse retro jerseys. And as you can see, I'm wearing my retro jersey. The Twitter world blew up, and I did another little video about that before I came on with you guys. I want to release. I want to know what you guys think about these jerseys, and if I know, Tom, you've been covering the Blues for like 20 years now, if I remember right.
On and off from the beginning of the century, I guess. Yes.
And Jim, you're still kind of new, but I know that you've been. If you're from St. Louis, so you know it a little bit. So I'll start with Tom on this one. What do you think of the retro jerseys?
Not a fan.
Not a fan?
Not a fan. The retro jerseys last year, I thought when they were all on the ice, it looked like they were wearing pajamas out there. They look fine in isolation, but then when you padding and everything else, it just took on this oddball look to me. And and they're the Blues, and it seems like they should be wearing blue. It's not the color, it's the music, but it's still blue. Look behind you there, on the wall, it's all blue. And to say, hey, we're going to wear red, just seems slightly out of place. And it is definitely red. I mean, that's those uniforms are red. So, not a fan. There you have it.
Jim, what do you think? And I get him as he's drinking water.
First off, I'm not the world's biggest uniform guy that's really into uniforms, and I know a lot of people are, but Tom took the words out of my mouth. Not a fan. As Tom tweeted yesterday, next thing you know, the Cincinnati Reds will be breaking out their blue retro uniforms. If it was one of the primary colors, say if it was a reverse retro, where that gold that you have the piping on your jersey there and around the blue note, if that had replaced the red, I would have said cool. But red, I mean, I don't know. I just think it was a reach, and it's not good.
I'm in the opposite of both of you guys. And the reason I say that is, first of all, the gold, when you look at the Nashville Predators of the Boston Bruins, two of our bigger rivals in the last year, I mean, it looks like those jerseys. And second, I like this jersey for the representation in it. What a lot of people don't realize is that the red down here is from the St. Louis flag. This represents St. Louis. And the lines that people don't realize, this is a blues staff that blues music would be written on. So this whole jersey was to connect St. Louis to the blues, and the way they did it with the trumpet, one of the major instruments of blues music, the blue note itself, and then with St. Louis in it. So to me, this uniform of any of the uniforms connected the city of St. Louis to the blues themselves, and that's why I like it.
Well stated there, Guy. But no sense. Still no sense.
You're who they want to have feel that way. Jim and I aren't buying the jerseys, so it's the Blues fans, and if they appreciate it, more power to them. But
based on the response I've gotten, and there were a lot of notifications. I read every one of them on the Blues original tweet, and there were dozens and dozens. I would say 80% are anti. So one fan even emailed me. Now I know why Petro wanted to leave. Because of the reverse retro, yeah.
Well, you know what? That's a great segue to our next topic. And I know I'm in the minority on this. I just like representation, and the fact that this jersey's full of it, it really it brings to me. So our second topic is the Krug signing and Pretro departing. What's your take on this? I know you guys are pretty well connected to those players and maybe you can give us some insight. I'll start with you there, Jim.
What's this? I'm sorry, I lost you there for a minute. Pretro signing?
Yeah, Pretro signing and our Pretro leaving and Krug signing. What's your insight into the way this all went down?
Well, I don't know if you noticed today there was a story in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Pretro has bought a
$6 million.
Bought a house, found a place to live in Vegas, and it's like a $6 million house. So hey, I guess he can afford it, right? With a $61.6 million contract. But I think we talked about this before, Guy. I said all along that if a player, and my experience is much more from covering football, but it's the same in hockey. If a guy, an established player, isn't under contract once the season's over, he's probably going to test the market. So I wasn't surprised that Pretro left. If he was that worried about being a legacy player in St. Louis, he would have stayed. But obviously, there are more important things. And I get the whole security part with the no move, the no trade, all that signing bonus money. But, he made his choice. He went for the better deal rather than the legacy deal. But I got to say, to Doug Armstrong's credit, he didn't waste any time in getting a pretty good consolation prize in Torrey Krug.
Yeah, he probably got the number 2 guy out there. Tom?
Well, for one thing, we see that no, you don't play hardball with Doug Armstrong and win. Or I mean, it's hard to say Petro lost because he walked away with 61.6. But what cases are there in Blues history where someone said, "I'm going to try to get, I'm going to try to win in this negotiation with Doug Armstrong and come out on top." When it comes to that point, Army says, "Okay, you don't like that? Thank you very much. We'll see you later." So, going in, you had to look at it that way. I'm not going to give a signing bonus. I'm not going to give a no movement. He's not going to budge. But, though to be in Alex Petrangelo's shoes, to make that money, to be living in Las Vegas, look, I mean, I'm from Southern California. I think he's going to move to Las Vegas and say, well, this seems like a pretty good idea. I mean, he's gonna wake up on January 2nd, and it's gonna be 80 degrees outside, and he's gonna say, "All right, I can live with this. This is fine. This is a good way to live." I mean, you live in Hawaii. Yeah. I mean, there are some points in time when you say cold weather vastly overrated. You won't have to buy a snow shovel. I mean, that's the thing of the savings right there. So. I think, unless his wife is really dead set on it, the state of Nevada has gained a new citizen for the next, 50 years. I mean, I don't see that there, unless his wife insists on it, I don't see a compelling need for him to come back. I think he's going to be perfectly happy in Las Vegas.
And then on the, like Jim mentioned, the Krug signing, I mean, that came out of nowhere. I mean, I think it went down like 11 p.m. St. Louis time. I know it was kind of late here. The NHL Network didn't even pick up on it except for a little blue box. They talked about it later. So, and you're right. Jim said it. I think he got the number 2 defenseman that was out there. Do you think Krug's going to fit well with what we have, Tom?
Well, Craig Berube thinks he's going to fit well, and Craig would certainly know better than I. I think his style, that he will be, he'll be offensive-minded, but he will also be aggressive, and we know that he will not shy away from clobbering someone if that presents itself. So, yeah, I think...
Even without a helmet on, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess now he has to have his helmet on.
Yeah, now. I think we'll see that. I think, you give up a few things. He obviously, doesn't have the height or the length or the width that Pietrangelo has, and so it'll slightly affect things defensively. That they can't just have the windshield wipers out there going on that. But I think, all in all, I mean, it changes things. It moves things around. I've said this before, that, it becomes a parlay. Before, if you have Pietrangelo there, you were set. Okay, that took care of 3 questions. Now it's a little bit Parayko, it's a little bit Krug, it's a little bit Vince Dunn. It's just going to be a combination of things that have to come together. They're all things that I think should come together, that there's a good chance they'll come together, but you're now betting on 3 things happening instead of 1 thing happening.
Yeah, I actually did a episode or a section for another podcast, and I called it Cooking Up the Blues Defense, and I made a Hawaiian dish called poke, and instead of the ingredients, I called them the players, and how you had to put all the ingredients together and mix them up, put them on ice, and let the acidity, cook it together. So, yeah, so I agree with you on that. Now, the one thing with the Pietrangelo, and I know it's been talked about a little bit, to me, this was mirrored the Hall deal almost exactly. If you remember that in 98, I think it was, 97, 98, he wanted a no trade clause, and they gave it to, it was either McGinnis or Pronger, and they wouldn't give it to him, and that was enough for him to walk, and he took less money going to Dallas than he was offered in St. Louis.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I was covering still bad Rams football back then. So, Tom, why don't you take a stab at that? It's
Doug Armstrong. So that would have been pre 98. The Army got there in 2000 and.
Yeah, I think that was it Ron? It might have been Ron Caron at the time still.
Ron Caron
was fired in No, it wouldn't
Yeah,
have been,
I think
John Davidson. It would have been Davidson, I think.
Well, no, because Davidson got there after the lockout.
After the lockout, yeah. So I don't remember. I know it wasn't Karan because Karan left.
Yeah, no, I think that was the Larry Plow era.
Yeah, Plo era. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if and it's a different ownership and different management, but yeah, if the team's got something in their DNA that says we're not going to give no movement, then you're not going to give no movement. Because if they gave Pietrangelo no movement, do they give Tarasenko no movement? Does Ryan O'Reilly get no move? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And I think that would have been, if you gave it to Pietrangelo, can you say he is so unique in the history of Blues hockey that the one guy, and then Tarasenko's going to say, I've scored a lot of goals. O'Reilly's going to say, I've been instrumental in how this team has played. You don't win the Stanley Cup without me. So, if rules are there, rules are made to be broken, but that was something that Army wasn't going to budge on. And so
you got to hand it to him. I mean, he dug his feet in and stayed there, and going after Krug, that was actually pretty amazing. Now, the other issue that he's got to deal with right now, and this will bring us to our next one, is both Steen and Tarasenko. Both of them are injured. We know that Tarasenko's is a shoulder injury, that he had a third surgery on it. From what I was told, it went well, and he's doing well. You guys can probably talk on that. But the other one, the one that concerns me, is Steen, because no one's come out and said it's an undisclosed injury, what it is. Does he need surgery? Will he get surgery? Will he be back? Will he retire? So that's a big question mark, and that's $5 million that we don't know which way is going to go.
Yeah, 5.7 million and some change there. But I remember in the Edmonton bubble watching Steen away from the puck during the postseason, and he just wasn't moving well. I mean, it was real obvious. He was away from the puck, but he just wasn't moving well. So I don't know what it is. It's a little harder. It's always harder to get injury info in the NHL. It's even harder now because we cannot access play. Maybe some we can reach via phone, but it's not like we can get them aside in the locker room because there's no such thing as a locker room interview right now. It's all on Zoom, and Tom and I and some others were on the exit interview with Steen. What was it, about 3-4 days after they got knocked out by Vancouver, and he said he didn't think it would need surgery. He didn't disclose exactly what it was. In watching him move, I couldn't tell you that it was something to do with the leg or ankle or knee or whatever. I think because he wasn't moving well, I'm going to guess something lower torso, lower body. That could be anything, and not just anything related to a knee or a leg. Maybe he's got some kind of core, like an abdominal muscle thing. I don't know, but it's interesting how that went from, Steen saying, well, I don't think I need surgery, and all of a sudden, and I've talked to Doug Armstrong a couple times, as has Tom, since the end of the season. And Armstrong's just saying he's going to start the year on LTIR. So, I don't know if he's subsequently had to have surgery or it's just something that's going to take a while. But you're right, Guy. There is a mystery to it, but he's not going to be there at the start of the season.
And it's going to be a short season.
Who knows how long? Yeah. And who knows how long afterwards. And Tarasenko, we know the deal. Now you could say, the doctors always say the surgery went well. You've never heard a team release. No, we didn't come out of surgery very optimistic on how things went. But it's really too early in the rehab to get a feel on how he's going, if he's ahead of schedule, behind schedule. And even then, Tarasenko said he felt great at Centene during the Phase 3, and he looked good. I thought he looked really good. And I was there for only a week before I headed to Edmonton. Tom saw him the whole, 2 weeks they were there. He looked good, and still he didn't last very long in Edmonton. So that's a concern, and I know enough about shoulder injuries that the more you mess them up, the more likely you are to mess them up again. There's only so much. And I've had a surgeon who done probably hundreds of shoulder surgeries, including some of the pro athletes, tell me that there's only so much you can do to once those tendons and ligaments are stretched out in the shoulder, there's only so much you can do to tighten them up. So I know Tarasenko is not happy about anyone doubting, at least he's shown on social media, doubting his ability to return and be the same old Tarasenko. But I think there's cause for legitimate concern there.
Agreed. Are you on that same boat there, Tom?
Yeah, I think you have to be. We'll see in February. Probably in February, right? That would be the estimated time of return. So he misses 1 month out of a 5-month season before the playoffs. We'll see, but it's whatever the number of games they play that will there won't be any 40-goal scorers, or maybe not, and probably not any 30-goal scorers. But does he score 20 goals and or does he score at a pace in which you think, okay, next year he should be back to being a normal season? Or do you say, time to be concerned? So it'll be tough, and sometimes you need, when you come back, you need like that season to play just to get back up to speed. He's played very little hockey lately. So how much time does he need? I remember Patrick Berglund, it wasn't until he came back and played for half a season before his knee was enough that he played in a way in which, he was expected to play. So it took a while. And that's, I think, going to be the same case. So it could be that this season, whatever it looks like, you're not going to get much out of him, but he has to do that for the following season. But the question will be, how much optimism can you have? Do you have to restructure what you do if you aren't sure how many goals you're going to be able to get out of Tarasenko?
And Guy, I'm sure you're aware of this. It looks like, by all indications, it's going to be a condensed season, where you may be playing a lot of 3 games in 4 nights, a lot of back-to-backs, a lot more than you normally would. For a guy just coming back from a shoulder injury, you're probably not going to be, at least at the start and maybe longer, you're not going to be able to play Tarasenko every game right out of the box.
Yeah. Certainly, if they're playing games as often as they talk about playing. And this goes back to the previous conversation, to Torrey Krug, which is why I was surprised they signed Krug, because I thought, boy, with the number of defensemen they have in the pipeline and with the uncertainty about Tarasenko, would it make sense to go and get a forward there, to try to get, maybe at not the full rate, you're going to get someone cheaper, someone who could score goals this year. And if you could get someone for $3 or $4 million, would that be a way to use the money, to not go after the really high-priced guys, but to go after Tyler Toffoli or someone like that, who maybe you could get at a lower price?
Well, declare so somebody. Yeah, and actually, I was kind of originally on the same wavelength as you, Tom, because there are guys waiting in the pipeline. Mikkola looks like he's ready. Perunovic could be ready. At most, maybe he needs 1 season in San Antonio. Now, if we're looking at more picture, and a guy that the Blues haven't given up on is Waldman. I mean, he's kind of still right there in the picture. I think he's playing better defense. It seems like he's been around forever, but he's, what is he, 24, maybe 25? So I think he's not off their radar. So they do have some guys stacked up.
Yeah, and actually it brings me right, God, you guys are great, right next to my next question. So the free agents that are out there are some names that I think are available cheap. Some just came off the top of my head: Hoffman, Duclair, Perry, and then you have the Dunn restricted free agency. Of the free agents that are out there, is Armstrong, or have you heard anything about Armstrong, talking to anybody, or any rumors floating around that you guys know about?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he's checked on all these guys, but again, you spent the Petro money, so you're already 1.1 million over the cap. So, and I know right now you have the savings from Tarasenko and Steen being on LTIR, or they will be once it matters. But again, it's almost like a credit card payment. When and if those guys return, you lose that money. You've got to be back under the cap. So, it sounds like right now Hoffman it doesn't sound like he's budging. Yeah, I don't think it sounds like he's going to be a guy you're going to get for $2 million or $3 million. Duclair, maybe. So I think maybe out of all this, they just re-sign Dunn and go from there. Now, again, Dunn, I think his actual salary was like $722,000, really bargain basement for one of only like 17 guys that have scored more than 20 goals, 17 defensemen that have scored more than 20 goals combined in the last 2 seasons. So it's not like you suddenly have to pay Dunn $3 million. I mean, maybe you pay, because he's a restricted free agent he wasn't arbitration eligible. Yeah. Maybe you give him $1.5 million and say, Vince, your time will come. So I think that's a lot easier to swallow than going out and paying $4 and $5 million for a Hoffman. And granted, some of the other guys would come cheaper, but I kind of think getting Dunn in the fold is probably more of a priority. I mean, I could be wrong. With Doug Armstrong, I learned very early, just, be ready for surprises, because Doug Armstrong isn't afraid to surprise you or make a bold move.
Yeah, the one thing that general managers love is low-cost, controlled players. Dunn, you're going to get him. He has no say in it unless he decides to hold out. They're going to offer him a contract, and he has no options other than not to take it, which I don't think he wants to do. So he could be in a bad mood about it. But if they offer him 1.5, that's what he's doing for. And teams love guys that you can not have to pay that much and can't do anything about it. So when you have cost-contained players that you control, that's mana. So you would have to give the Blues a lot for them to say, what's a preferred option to Vince Dunn? Because they got that there. And that Carl Gunnarsson is done after next year. He's not coming back. He's not getting another contract. And there are guys like that. So you want to keep young guys, and you let the old guys move on. That's how it works. And I wouldn't be surprised if with, the 1.1 million or whatever it is that they're over the cap, that, if Tarasenko and Steen both are back and both play and they have to do it, that when you get into the year, that's when Armstrong will look to trade a defenseman who is currently making enough money. And that's how they would get back under the cap, by trading a defenseman who makes enough money that would get them back under.
Yeah, and who knows, in a shortened, condensed season where maybe the conditioning and the buildup isn't as great, you never know. By the time Steen and Tarasenko, one or both, come back, you may have another guy on LTIR, and he may be on LTIR for the rest of the season, in which case you have the loophole, and you get that money. Now, Guy, your point about them needing more goal scoring, especially with Tarasenko out, I think it's well taken. Now, last year, the Blues defied logic. It was their highest scoring team in terms of average goals per game. I think it was 3.14 goals since the 94-95 season. They had a lot of guys that had either reached their career high in goals or were pretty close, even in a shortened 71-game season. But is it realistic to think Lightning will strike twice and they'll be able to make up those Tarasenko goals without him for a second consecutive season? I think that's something to think about.
Yeah, for me, the thing that changed there is Pietrangelo. The Blues offense comes from their defense. It comes from them getting the puck out of their zone. It comes from that forecheck down, when they get the puck in, that forecheck opening guys up. Well, now some of that's gone with Pietrangelo being gone, and we've got Falk as a big question mark. I mean, it looked like during the playoffs, and Jim, you were there, like he started figuring it out, but that was with Pietrangelo. Pietrangelo gone as he got another learning curve, being with either Falk or Scandella. That's a question. And then what I think is, if you don't bring in a free agent, you've got Klostin, who hasn't stepped up yet and needs to. Cairo, who a lot of fans are all over him. When's he going to step up? Then you have the Australian, and I can't remember his name right now. I think he needs a chance. That goal he scored, that cricket-style goal where he snapped his stick down and knocked it in was amazing. I don't know how that wasn't one of the top 10. So that's where I'm looking at, and maybe I'm shooting in the dark or not on this right page, but that's kind of where my thought process is.
Well, Kyrou will get a chance. He certainly is figuring with all the moves they've made, and Armstrong has said it. The reason they didn't go after some of these other guys is they got to play, Jordan Kyrou. They got to see what they've got in him. And if you go out and sign one of these other guys, then you're condemning, Jordan Kyrou to be, the 13th forward for another year. So they got to see what they got with Kyrou. He's going to get every chance. He should come into camp healthy this year. Whenever that may be, and they'll see. Costin. It's tough to with the forwards they have. It's tough to envision a world where he's into the top 12 with everybody they got. But then you'll see, and we'll see. Sammy Blais, Zach Sanford, that collection of guys where they figure in. Does one of them step up? Sanford certainly the last half of the year was a guy that was scoring goals. Looks like he could do it. There have been problems with Hoare where he then drops off a cliff and you don't hear from him for a while. Can he keep that up on a consistent basis? That's, I think, where you're more likely to get the offense from. I think Kyrou may still need a season of playing all the time in the NHL. I think you're more likely to see a 20-goal season or the metric equivalent thereof from Sanford than you are from Kyrou next year, in part because Sanford is more likely to play on a higher line, on the second line, which Kyrou isn't likely to do. Kyrou would look to be on the third line, I would think, if he gets in.
And Armstrong, when the season started and Kyrou was called up, Armstrong told Kyrou, and Armstrong told us, he told Kyrou, "You're not going back to the minors. You are an NHL player." So they've got to make room for him. And there were times I'm a little. You said fans maybe are all over him. I think a fan should be all over anybody on Kyrou. It should be the coach and the general manager. Play the guy more. Now, I realize he's got to do better without the puck. There are times when you can tell he's just kind of floating out there, They should just show him tape after tape of Jaden Schwartz, a smaller guy who's like a Tasmanian devil out there. He's just in front of the net, going into the corners to do the dirty work. Winning loose puck battles. Kyrou needs to learn how to do that. But you watch his offensive ability. Mm-hmm. And he's only shown it, maybe a half a dozen or a dozen times even last season. He just sizzles out there. He's got speed and some skill and a better shot, I think, and more willing to take a shot than Thomas. You as Tom said, you got to get him more minutes. Thomas. They want Thomas to be a top 6 forward. No more of this third line with Thomas. So you've got to create a room for him. And you've got to hope guys like Blais. Blais was on 20 games into the season. Blais was on a 20-goal pace. But Blais has a tendency to get nicked up. So he's got to stay healthy. Sundqvist was on a 20, maybe 20-plus pace. He came out of the gate strong. Then he had a bunch of injury problems. So those are players, those two. And Sanford, they all look like they have room to grow. McEachern, maybe he doesn't fit in, but the dude scored 7 goals, played 40 games maybe, and 8 minutes a game. So he has a little bit of a knack in his own way. So I think they see plenty of players that have the potential to produce more.
Well, I'm with you, and I love the insight that you guys are giving. And actually, this is something about Blues fans that's really funny. They're on Kyrou, not about his offense, about his, like you talked about, his away from the puck stuff. All the groups that I'm in, it's always, what's he doing? Why is he not, in the play? Why is he not getting in the corner? That's what they're looking at. So that's a good point that you made, that's where his game is lacking.
Well, you got to do that to play for Berube and Armstrong too. Just ask Robbie Fabry.
Yeah, that's a great case in point. So I had originally had something else planned, but I'm going to kind of change it up a little bit. So Jim, you were in the bubble, and one of the things that I heard after the Blues got out, and it still concerns me, and maybe you can talk to it a little bit, was that there was not this buy-in to the bubble, that they weren't ready. And then Armstrong made some comments to the fact that the Blues were upset about the outlet. It was on the NHL Network and made some comments along those lines. What did you see or feel? I mean, why was there not a buy-in? I mean, isn't that something that the coach is supposed to handle, or was it a COVID-19 thing? What do you think?
Well, I don't think you needed to be in Edmonton to notice it. It jumped right off the screen, and I'm sure Tom can speak to it too. They just didn't seem as energetic, the sense of urgency. Berube even mentioned it after the fact that they didn't seem fully invested up there. Okay, you're coming off a Stanley Cup, short off season. You've got a lot of players that are married, have young kids. 3 or 4 of them, I think, had babies either during the time or right before the time. You had some players like we think Parayko and Dunn that were dealing with some COVID issues, and they weren't they weren't 100%. So you have all this going on, and I don't know if you blame it on the coach. I mean, Berube's a heck of a motivator, and the players are professionals. I mean, do you want to be up there or not? And I tell you what, there's been some stuff written about, wow, these were strange circumstances, write them off. Well, you know what? 2021 are going to be strange circumstances as well. There still could be like mini bubbles. Blues, are you going to buy in this time, or are you going to wait till 21, 22 when we think it's going to be back to a sense of normalcy?
Yeah, Tom, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, I think the Blues had that issue in the round robin games. They're like, look, we just don't want to get hurt. We want to get through these games. We don't care whether we're 1, 2, 3, or 4. We want to make sure no one gets banged up. So they did not play those games with the intensity they needed to. And then game 1 against Vancouver, it was clear they couldn't flip the switch. The problem was they flipped the switch in game 2, and hockey being hockey, they still lost. Yeah. That you can't, that happens in this game. I mean, it is the most random of sports. Well, then you're in a hole. And so then everything changes at that point in time. So, yeah, I think that's where they got into trouble. And then once they fell behind at the end there was like, it seemed like, fire up the plane. We want to go home.
Yeah, I had talked to a friend of mine about Game 6, and I said Game 6 is going to be a blowout. Unfortunately, I was right. It seemed like, to me, that game against the Avalanche, losing with 0.1 second left on the board, really affected the team. Jim, I mean, you were there. You kind of saw. Did you see that, or do you think that I'm off base on that one?
Well, sometimes they can, but I didn't sense that. And the Blues they've been really shown, at least in my time covering them, that they've been really good. Just putting a bad game behind them, and that wasn't a bad game. It just seemed like a game where they just didn't have a lot of jump in their step. But one thing they did have coming out of that game, Binnington was amazing. So maybe it affected Binnington because after a decent start in the second round robin against Vegas, I guess for about the first period plus, he got shelled. He gave up 4 goals, I think, in the last 1 2/3 period there, and wasn't the same. So I don't know. Maybe it affected Binnington that way.
Yeah, and that's possible.
I think the one effect of that loss is that it kept the Blues from lucking into a better result. And if they go to overtime and they maybe win, or it goes to shoot and they win, that do they end up being the number 3 seed instead of the 4 seed? And you never know how that changes the entire postseason. You get a different opponent. They get a team hit with injuries at that time, and once you get through the first round, well, then it's a whole different ball game. So that's the one effect, but it goes. You can't predict it. Just how does things play out differently if they had lucked into 2 points in that game, which they might have been able to do,
or even just gotten the point for the tie. You're a tenth of a second away from a tie, from a point, and that point could have been a lot in that. So right now, going on, I think it's still going on. I could be wrong, but the governors are meeting and they're talking about return to play. What have you guys heard about return to play? I know you talked about a shortened season. I heard something today that the season could be anywhere from 56 to 72 games is what I think I seen or read. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Oh, I say, well, I think it could be as few as 48, because 48 is kind of the NHL established minimum you need to have the season go. A lot may depend, it's going to depend on when they can start, because they know when they got to end, because they got to get done in time for the Olympics on NBC. So that's going to, the games are how many games they can play. The players are going to have to say how many games how often they're willing to play. Will they allow them to do, back-to-backs? Can you do 3 and 4 nights? What's the acceptable workload they'll want to have, because it's going to take a toll. How many games can they squeeze in, which is all going to be working back. Will they be playing 4 games a week? It sounds like they could well be more like baseball, where you play Chicago for a 3-game series and then move on to somewhere else. So it remains to be seen. It seems like they're taking steps. And also, do they set up the schedule where it is spread out more at the beginning and they have more games late, on the assumption that they might be able to sell tickets to those later games? And so you spread the games out more in January and February, hoping that in April and May, if you're going to play 2/3 of the season, that you do it then, because you can get money that way. So there might be an incentive to backload the schedule in an effort to have games that people can attend, especially if they think there's a vaccine that people will start taking in the early months of the year, that then allow you to get to games, or where testing is such that they can test people at the door at the Enterprise Center, and if you pass the test, okay, you can come in, and if you don't, you can't. There's all those kind of factors that'll be at play as to how these things work.
I think there's going to be a Canadian division, though, and I think the Blues might be screwed in terms of a realignment. If there's a Canadian division, it's not enough Western teams.
Yeah.
There's 6 really Western teams. Then you add Dallas for 7, and St. Louis would be 8. I don't think they'd have like a 6-team Western division, and then maybe 9 or 10 somewhere else. But so there's going to be divisions. There could be mini bubbles. They've talked about mini bubbles. They've also talked, I guess some owners are pushing, no, let's have the game in our building. There may be some cities where the health codes and everything, the mandates, where you're not going to be able to host a home game. So it may be something where they start out with these mini bubble cities and then move into maybe if things get a little better, if the COVID is the vaccine is you're able to test people, where then they move into having more games in all the stadiums. But there's still a lot unknown. I mean, we don't know how rapidly the vaccine is going to be available to everybody. And guys, they have a short time to get this going. I did a little story, talked to Mike Liud, who I think's been on your podcast. He said they basically have until the end of November to get something sorted out. They're running out of time because, as Tom mentioned, NBC isn't going to say, "Hey, go on into August. We'll just blow off the Olympics or put them on what is it, True TV or something." They got to be done by roughly about July 15th. So this plane's got to land, and they're starting to run out of runway.
Yeah, another thing that they've talked about is possibly open air games, outdoor games, to allow playing in that fashion, playing in smaller stadiums or whatever. The other thing that is really affecting this that nobody's talking about is the TV contract, because it's up. I mean, now it's negotiation time, and is NBC going to use this bargaining to try and bring that? Because there's talk that it was going to be $4 billion over an 8-year period instead of a 10-year period, where this one was $2 billion for 10 years, or having more than one, not just NBC, but a streaming service, or NBC has some, ESPN has some, so you're showing more games. That could have a huge effect on. And
this is just it's just the U.S. contracts that are up, right? Is that right, Tom? I think
both of them.
The Canada is, yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah, they'd rather not push them back, and like say if they, I mean, I'd still say there's a small percentage, maybe 10%, 15% that they won't even play this year. I mean, ESPN, this was a couple of weeks ago, ESPN.com, Emily Kaplan or Greg Wyshynski, they combined on the story, said that several owners just want to, hey, let's just pass on the season. We don't need to play, but obviously they're gonna try to play, but there's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah. Well, the NHL did do the bubble right. You got to admit, they did that bubble right. They had no positive tests in the bubble. They had a wonderful playoff, and you got to congratulate the Tampa Bay Lightning for just plowing through it. And, Pat Maroon is only the 6th man in history, and I think the 2nd or 3rd in the expansion era to win back-to-back rings on different teams. I mean, and then you have Shattenkirk who moved around and then finally got his ring. You got to hand it to me. You got to hand it to the NHL. You were in the bubble, Jim. Do you feel like they did it right?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. Obviously, you can't do that for an entire NHL season, but for what they were faced with just say we're gonna basically hold the playoffs here, and also do this round robin, and each team had one exhibition game. You couldn't ask for a better way to do it. I mean, they did a fantastic job. There's no doubt about it, and you could tell. I mean, we talked about the Blues, but some teams were more into it than others.
Well, as we're getting ready to go, I would like to give you guys a chance to talk about what you're writing about or what you got coming up. I'll start with Tom.
So Jim's got all the hockey fun right now. So I'm doing other things. So I just wrote a story on pickleball, and when I come back from vacation, I'll be writing a story about dressage. And
about what?
Writing.
Oh,
dressage.
You have to get on a horse for that, right?
Yes, you need a horse for that. It's figure skating on a horse or ballet on a horse.
I actually know what that is. How dumb am I that I know what dressage is?
You're starting to scare me now, guy. You're starting to scare me.
And then I'm working on a story on horseshoes, and I got a story in the can on Stan Musial's 100th birthday. So those are.
And he's on vacation doing all that.
And I'm on vacation. So.
Well, yeah, and then
it is the off season. So in hockey, I mean, it is basically August. So there's not a ton of hockey stuff going on. Now we did have the little news about the retros. Well, not little news to you, as we've learned here tonight on your podcast. And also today, the Blues hired a strength and conditioning coach, although they have a fancy name for that. But and we've kind of we're not doing them every week, but they're a lot of fun to do. We've recycled the Blues, the Where Are They Now stories, and I talked to Scott Young, who was a 40-goal scorer for the Blues. So we're going to have that at some point. I did an interview with the president of the Springfield Thunderbirds. They're going to be whenever there is hockey, the Blues affiliate, and had a nice talk with him just about how excited they are in Springfield to have the Blues, but also the frustration of not being able to get anything going. Quick trivia question for you, guy. Which Blues icon played AHL hockey in Springfield?
Ooh.
Bobby Plager.
I think that was the one that was going to come with. I thought it was.
Yeah, sure. No, and I also just today I caught up with Scott Perunovich, just how he's doing, and he's been skating with Justin Falk up in Minneapolis. They're both Minnesotans, and so we've got a few things in the can. It's hard to, as Tom will attest, it's kind of hard to get stuff in the paper, our section, because there's not a whole lot going on. We have Mizzou football when they're not canceling games because of COVID, but we don't have an NFL team. Our section's a little tighter than normally in terms of space.
Well,
so it's a little harder in the paper.
With no disrespect to any news, the Cardinals are king in St. Louis, and the deal with Colton Wong and Yadier Molina and Wainwright is probably taking up the majority of your paper.
Yeah, we manage, Tom, don't we, to get baseball coverage in there, huh?
Yeah, and you got SLU basketball about to get going. They're around the corner.
And they're good. They're going to be good, aren't they?
They are supposed to be good this year. So they tell me. So
and every now and then, Tom drops in a story on what do they call St. Louis City? Is that the name of the soccer?
St. Louis City SC, yeah. our aspiring MLS team. So.
I'm actually hoping that I get to go see a game, get to see an MLS game. I would really love to see one. I've never seen a soccer game live, even living in Japan as long as I did with their league, and I didn't get to see one. So I'm hoping I do get to see some of that, because they're playing. I think their season is kind of with the Blues season, almost kind of the same. So
no, they'll start in February and go through November.
February through November. So there's some connection.
So they'll have the summer. You'll have the summer when it'll be just them and the Cardinals. So
Yeah.
It's going to be, Tom, wasn't it like 50,000 deposits they had for tickets? Something like that?
that sounds about right. Yeah. They had to put down for season tickets. Yeah.
For a 25,000 seat stadium. So I don't know how they're going to squeeze them all in.
They'll figure out a way, I'm sure. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on and spending your time. And Tom, thank you for taking some vacation time out for me. Great. You guys are both great friends, and I appreciate you coming and talking Blues hockey. And the people that do watch this are going to get some really good insight.
Tom told me, though, because he came on during his vacation, when he gets a vacation, not in the pandemic, that you have to put him up in Hawaii. So,
hey, no problem there. We'll figure something out as soon as my daughter leaves. So I got the Morton boys, and they got something that they want to tell you.
Let's go Blues! Let's go Blues! Let's go Blues!
My two little boys there from the Mortons. And this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying aloha, mahalo, and I'll catch you on the Blue Note Fan Report. Aloha! Okay. Hold on, I'm trying to get the recording to stop. Me and my mouse don't want to work together today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what an interview. And I have to say something in all fairness. This interview was recorded on Tuesday, the 17th, and was done before the news came out about the owners asking the players to defer more money, and that impasse that's come up. I do plan on doing a show on this, but I want to get some more information before I just spout out the little bit that's been in the news, been out on Twitter. I want to see if I've reached out to a couple people. I'm going to see if I can get some more information that could be helpful to all of us. With that said, Jim Thomas and Tom Timmermann, thank you so much. I'm very glad that you were able to sit down with me and talk to me. And yes, I just want to say this. Jim does not ignore my emails or my texts. He's very good at getting back to me, even when he's busy and when I was joking with him. So, guys, this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan. I know you've been missing me, and I apologize. I'm trying to get my head straight, trying to get back into the game. So when we do get hockey back, I can give you the best Blue Note Fan Report out there. And please, we're kind of stagnant at 535 followers, so spread the word, and let's see if we can get that number to 1,000 very quickly. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report, saying please like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the Blue Note Fan Report on YouTube and on Facebook. And you got to know what the Martin boys say. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, and yes, I am bleeding blue with you. Aloha! I'll see you on the next Blue Note Fan Report.